Spin to Win is back, and this time it's the WhirlQuake build. We're just flying through this 95 like it's nothing, just dropping earthquakes everywhere. This build gives my Spiritborn last season a run for the money. Let's crush the boss. Let's just evaporate it. There we go. Here it is. WhirlQuake Season 7. What's up guys, Xygor here. It's Season 7 in Diablo 4 and it's already clear that the WhirlQuake Barb is crushing it. This is one of the most powerful builds in the game. I've been doing 100s over and over in the pit on it at Paragon 238 with about 30 hours of playtime already, I think. But this build's capable of doing 140s, maybe even 150s in the end when it scales. So today I'm going to bring you a complete build guide. I'm going to go over the gear, the aspects, the skills, expertise, the paragons, the witchcraft powers, and even the witchcraft gems that you can do to play this. I have 3 versions of this build in a link in the description below because I have a leveling path, one where you get some uniques, and then the end game, which I'm playing right now. So all 3 of those are going to be linked below in the description, but I'm going to go over it right now. So for skills, this is the end game right now, but refer to those sheets for your experience until you get to the end game. We have Rallying Cry, War Cry, Challenging Shout, Call the Ancients, Ground Stomp, and Whirlwind. So for the gear, the Harlequin Crest, this is a very valuable mythic unique to get. You don't have to have it, as I put in the build guide. You can go God Slayer if you don't have it. It's one of the best items that we can get, along with Starless Skies. These are the 2 mythics that we will use. For the chest, Mantle of Mountain's Fury gives us really good damage. The scaling chance for Earthquake to deal double damage is fantastic, as is Defensive Stance. The Armor and the Hammer of the Ancients don't help us too much, but this is still clearly the best chest to get for this build. And we're not using Hammer of the Ancients, we're only using Whirlwind, but still the Earthquakes that it spawns, this affects that. With gloves, we have Fist of Fate. This is the most powerful gloves to get in this spec. You're looking for a 300% roll on the bottom affix and as high crit chance as you can. The attack speed and lucky hit chance and the lucky hit ability don't matter as much on this, but you want to get crit high enough that it gets to 100. I'll talk about that in a second. Ariet's Bearing for the legs. This both gives us resistance all, and it makes our Call the Ancients basically super powered and allows us to get more fury from that. It's just an all-around great unique that you want to have. With the boots, I have Yen's Blessing. In the end, when I am able to max out my all resist, I will change this out for a regular rare. But Yen's Blessing is a really good one because it gives you resist all, and that's really valuable at the beginning of the game. I will scale it later so that I'll replace it, but Yen's Blessing right now is really fantastic. I got a nice one with 3 greater affixes. For the weapons, we want one with Earthquake for 2-hander and one with Incendiary Fissures. On one of them, we are rolling with Igni Tech. This basically allows our Earthquakes to go down super quick in succession and just spam them as you're whirlwinding over and over. It's really valuable to get Igni Tech as soon as possible, as it is to get Bakgar. Bakgar will allow your critical strike chance to ramp up to 25%, which allows us to basically get 100 once it's boosted. I'm not there right now, but once we get into the pit, I would be. For the rolls here, we want to have Strength Max Life, Crit Strike Damage, Damage while Berserking, and Chance for Earthquakes to cast twice. Chance for Earthquakes to cast twice is fantastic. That's what you want to masterwork if you can. There's 100 max on it, and it's really valuable because you do a ton of damage. On the other 2-hander, we have Heavy Hitter and Damage to Close Enemies. Heavy Hitter is by far the best passive we have in this build. In the end game, it's going to be all about stacking Heavy Hitter with Masterwork. I'm not there yet, but I did get a 6 roll on this, and close damage. So you want to have both damage while berserking and close damage on all your weapons. For 1-handers, I have swords. They have a crit strike implicit, and I have close enemies and Heavy Hitter on this one, and I have close enemies and Heavy Hitter on this one. Alternatively, you could go Wrath of the Berserker and heavy hitter, but you definitely want heavy hitter. Green gems in them. For rings, Starless Skies, super great item. Tons of damage and reduces your resource cost. It's really important to have this. It's the #1 mythic unique to have for this build, so if you don't have any yet, this is the one to craft first. We also have Bold Chieftains. Really great item that reduces your cooldown. Keeps your shouts up basically all the time. We have it with Call of the Ancients cooldown reduction and damage to close enemies. With the amulet, I don't have the best one right now, but I do have a counteroffensive strength movement speed. Ideally, I would like to get, instead of the movement speed, like you can get heavy handed. That's a really good other affix for it. And cooldown's alright, but I already have a ton of cooldown anyways from Harlequin and some other things. But this is a pretty good one. We have Ground Stomp cooldown reduction and Earthquake size. You want to Ground Stomp all the time. It basically ensures that your Call of the Ancients is always up and you're spawning whirlwinds. Or I'm sorry, you're spawning the Earthquakes all the time. We have Bulkathos on this. That aspect is an insane aspect that gives you both incredible damage and really great survivability. I think this is probably the best aspect in the whole build. Earthquakes might be too, but this one's fantastic. Alright, let's go to the skill tree. We will go to the skill tree right now. So I got just 2 points in Lunging Strike. This is what I use to level. Not using it anymore because you don't need it anymore. Now I don't have a generator. 1 point in Whirlwind, and then we go up to Furious Whirlwind. This keeps Bleed up, and Bleed helps our damage because we benefit from things that do damage to bleeding enemies. Also, it's just got good synergies. Pressure Point, 2 points here. You can keep stuff vulnerable other ways, but this is one thing that I just took because the points make sense there. We have 4 Ground Stomp, and then 2 Strategic Ground Stomp here. We have 3 to Imposing Presence, 3 to Martial Vigor, Rallying Cry over to Strategic Rallying Cry, and Challenging Shout to Tactical Challenging Shout. Just a reminder, this skill tree is in the link in the description below again as well. We have War Cry over to Power War Cry. 3 points in Booming Voice, keep our shouts up. We have 1 point in Aggressive Resistance. This is bugged right now. It only allows 4. If you put more points in this, you don't get more than 4 right now. Hopefully they'll fix that, but for now we have 1 point here, 3 in Battle Fervor, and 2 in Prolific Fury. I have enough Fury generation. I might be able to kind of drop points here once they fix this, hopefully, but it's really good. Pit Fighter, 3. We have No Mercy, 3. They changed this to flat crit strike chance. It's awesome. It's really valuable now. Slaying Strike, 3 points there. 1 point in Thick Skin to get 3 Defensive Stance. Defensive Stance is really ridiculously powerful. You get a ton of fortification and a ton of healing with this. I really recommend you have this, especially if you don't have Harlequin Crest. But even with Harlequin Crest, this is really good survivability. Counteroffensive, 3 here. We got 5 points in Call of the Ancients up to its Supreme Call of the Ancients. And we have Heavy Hitter 15. This can go way higher. I haven't been able to masterwork it really or scale it up, but this is the most important stat in the entire build. And then we have 3 points in Heavy Handed. I mentioned that earlier. 3 points in Wallet because we're using the bludgeon weapon for our attack for Whirlwind. However, this is something I think we can drop because we're not going to be doing our damage from Whirlwind. It's going to be the Earthquake. So I'll have to shift that in a little bit and unconstrain. So that's the skill tree. It's basically the same whether you're leveling, get uniques in endgame. You can tweak it a little bit, but I think that's a good build overall. But if I had a choice, I would drop some Wallop, maybe put it in Swiftness or something else to adjust that. Paragon Boards. Alright, Paragon Boards. Basically, we are starting with Territorial. Close damage, really important in this build for several reasons. Again, there's a link in the description below that gives you the full Paragon board for all 3 of the variants of this build, whether you're leveling, getting uniques, or the endgame. Going up from there, we have Wrath for crit strike damage. We're getting a lot of the rare nodes here, and Decimator, really good for this build as well. From there, the next board I think you want to go to is to the east for Martial. We have this in the Force of Nature build. Force of Nature allows you to spawn Dust Devils, and your Earthquake damage is increased more. This is really good to have. Current bonus of 200, that's the maximum. That's good, that's what we want. And Martial is able to keep our shouts up. Martial, we don't want to spend that many extra points in here because it's not that valuable until the very end. Alright, so going north from the second board, we're going to Rumble for Blood Rage. We're putting in the Rumble glyph. Rumble's the most important glyph for this build. You want to stack as many points as possible as you can here. You can see I have 105 right there. This is, and I think there's one more here when I get this, but this is the best glyph. Level this first. It scales your Earthquake incredibly high. It's really important. Over here to the east then, we're going to go on the Weapons Master board, which again, really helpful here. You do a lot of damage to injured and healthy enemies. That one scales multiplicatively, I believe. It's really good. And then we have Exploit here. Keep stuff vulnerable, but also vulnerable damage. I'm going to play with this a little bit. I think that there might be other options here because you can make things vulnerable other ways, but you do get vulnerable damage here. So it's a good choice. I will fill this out more later. Also, I will just mention that I'm toying with the idea of switching out Wrath for Ire, because Wrath of the Berserker damage is really good and it might scale better than crit strike damage in this build. So I think you have a choice there. I've seen other people use maybe Challenger, and there's other choices, Undaunted. There's a few other glyphs you can use, but I think Wrath or Ire is probably the best. Alright, let's go to Expertise. So Expertise with this build, you're doing Two-Handed Axe Expertise, and I have to level this up a little bit. But Two-Handed Axe, it's going to give us the most damage. You're going to be hitting with your Earthquakes here, so the Whirlwind's going to be hitting with the Bludgeon weapon. That's what you need to scale your Earthquakes super high. And the polearm that I have is essentially just a stat stick. It can be a sword. I think sword might be better because you get the implicit critical strike damage, but vulnerable damage is good too. I think you go to a 10-to-1 ratio is kind of optimal, so maybe this is a better choice in the end anyways. Witchcraft powers. So here's the season mechanic. I've unlocked them all. I just unlocked all the 4 hidden ones with altars, but I'm going with Piranhado. I haven't leveled it yet, but I think this should end up the best. Soul Harvest. This is the core stat gain that you get. Aura Specialization, more crit strike damage. Haven't leveled that quite up yet. Hex of Shattering. This I have leveled to 10, so you're going to get guaranteed critical strikes. But I think that we can... and reduced enemy damage. That's mostly what we get for it, because we already have 100% crit once you scale everything up in this build. Shaken Soul, this is, I think, might end up being the best. It keeps enemies vulnerable because we are using powers, or a siphoning power to poison enemies. It should automatically make everything vulnerable. So that might end up being the best and allow you to kind of migrate like pressure point points and maybe even drop exploit in the end. But that's the best. For the Witchcraft Gems, I haven't crafted any yet. I haven't had the mats yet, so I'm just putting diamonds over here. But I think the best should end up being Friend of the Bog, Moonlight Ward, and Dust Stone. But I do need to test them. Here's the WhirlQuake Barb, guys. We're crushing a pit 100 right now. We're basically just dropping a ton of Earthquakes everywhere. And the key thing here is basically you're ground stomping as much as possible, hitting all your shouts whenever they're up, and whenever you hit ground stomp, it basically allows Call of the Ancients to return. And you want to tap Whirlwind. You don't want to hold it down because you need to proc the tech rune. And if you hold it down, it won't proc the tech rune. So we're getting a lot more Earthquakes if we tap Whirlwind. It's really key for this, for gameplay. That's the #1 thing you need to know to play this build. Spin to win, man. We don't need Hoda. We're basically doing ridiculous damage in a pit 100 3 days in, and this build is already stronger than my Spiritborn Quill Volley was last season. if that tells you anything. So this is a really powerful build. Let's see, we get this Lethal Shrine. Doesn't help us that much with this build, but that's alright. Basically ground stomping every time. Stuff that comes close to you will mostly just die to the whirlwinds, except for elites at this level. Sometimes you want to just stick on those for a little bit. If you have grasping whirlwind on your boots, it'll pull them in. I don't have that yet, still running to Yens. But we're just flying through, guys. This is a really fun and powerful build. And it's going to scale just insanely with heavy hitter. You're going to be able to get so many heavy hitter stacks, I think 12 on the two-handers. I'm nowhere close, and I'm already just crushing this content. So I'm really enthusiastic about this build, and we're just about to get to the boss here for Paragon 100. Not Paragon 100, Pit 100. Alright, we got the boss. Let's go do the boss. Well, there's Judgment. We're just spamming Ground Stomp and tapping Whirlwind here. Look at how fast this dies. We got it staggered already. And it doesn't even get to do, like, really any of its abilities. It's a Pit 100, guys. That's where it's at. WhirlQuake Barbarian. This build's going to scale like crazy. And possibly we'll do 150s. So, there's a lot of things I can optimize. But man, the sky's the limit with this build. It's probably close to Necro, not quite. And Druids has that Cataclysm bug right now, but I think this is probably a top 3 build in the entire season. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you have any idea of how to optimize this better, maybe something I'm overlooking, I'd love to know. But hey, Spin to Win's back. I love this playstyle. WhirlQuake's great, and I don't want to go regular Hoda anymore because this is such a good speed clearing build. So, thanks. I guess I hope you guys enjoyed this build guide. Again, let me know what you think of it. Are you having fun this season? Also, let me know in the comments. I want to know what you're playing, what you think about this season compared to others, and I'll check you later.